Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to NUS Dream Big, the ideas that change the world, with a specific focus on heroes in leadership today. My name is Dr. David Kramer. I'm a provost chair and professor in management at NUS Business School, and I'm also the founder and director of the Center on AI Technology for Humankind. And we're organizing together with Scale at NUS this event. I will be your host and moderator as well. So this event, its major aim is to discuss an interesting interplay between what we know as gender diversity, leadership, and technology. And we have four amazing female leaders today that we'll present to you: Andrea, Carolyn, Melanie, and Jane. And we look forward to hearing from them how they see this interplay between gender diversity, leadership, and technology, because we live in a technology era. We also would like to delve a little bit deeper into their own career, their leadership trajectory, and the challenges that they faced. And finally, if time permits, we'll touch upon how our changing work contexts, being human and machine interaction, may or may not have an impact on gender diversity and leadership issues. But without further ado, it's now my pleasure to invite NUS President, Professor Tang Eng Chai, to deliver his opening address. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David. Good afternoon to everyone, and I'm grateful that you have tuned in to this seminar. We live in dynamic and exciting times with important tasks that need our attention. And thanks to technology, we seem to be living in a deluge of messages, emails, reading materials, and also noises and distractions. Nevertheless, it is our desire that this seminar serves as a source of inspiration for all of you, a refreshing change that sows a seed in your mind to dream of new solutions. Modern society is accomplishing great advances in science and innovation. We go deep into space, we build transportation vehicles that run on clean energy using AI. We detect, prevent, and treat illnesses faster and more effective than ever. Notwithstanding, there are real and existential threats that require further work and action. Climate change, access to food and water, designing and building ecologically sustainable cities. The list is long, and for many of us, work is centered on improving things and solving problems every day. It is thus wise to keep Albert Einstein's words in mind. In the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. The vision of NUS is to be a leading global university shaping the future. At NUS, we believe in a bright and progressive future driven by the spirit of human creativity. And to make this a reality, we have chosen an inclusive path that embraces diversity and offers opportunities for development of both individuals and community through the pursuit and application of knowledge. Yet the greater magic will come not just from individual brilliance, but from fusion. And this is combining and integrating people, ideas, knowledge, expertise, and resources in innovative ways. This is why NUS is taking a lead to spearhead interdisciplinary research and education. Modern day problems are complex and do not have singular solutions. Creative thinking and solutioning require interdisciplinary knowledge and approaches. Ideas and solutions become richer and more holistic when one draws upon connections, harnessing perspectives from across different approaches and disciplines. Here at NUS, we want to encourage everyone to dream big, one that is not limited by one's discipline or training or experience. It is with this background I present to you the first installment of the NUS Dream Big series. Through this initiative, we will bring together great achievers in respective fields and give them a stage to share their thoughts with us. It is also most apt that the opening session of NUS Dream Big is on heroes in leadership, featuring women, leadership, and technology. Some of you may have read about the university's active efforts in supporting and drawing women into academia. NUS is one of the institutions that started the Rising Stars Women in Engineering workshop in 2018 to bring together young women from around the world to explore academic careers. Gender will not be an issue. As an inclusive employer, we want every staff to fully realize his or her potential and not be constrained by role or gender stereotyping. NUS is heartened to see that more women are joining NUS now, and also that there are more women now in STEM disciplines. Recently, we have announced that female faculty members will have a reduced teaching load for a semester after returning from maternity leave. Now, this is just one small but important step towards supporting our female faculty as they juggle work and family commitments. So I'm thus excited to hear from our distinguished speakers today. They are all inspiring individuals who are leaders in the technology world. We will hear about the ideas that shape them into who they are, the obstacles they have overcome along the way, and learn something that begins as an illusory idea eventually becoming reality. So a big thank you to our distinguished speakers. So in closing, I hope everyone will enjoy this session and that you will leave this seminar filled with inspiration, new ideas, and excitement about what can be achieved if we all dream big. Thank you.
Thank you, President, for the opening speech, and we'll definitely try to create some magic and inclusiveness today as well. So, as I just mentioned, and the President also referred to it, Dreaming Big, this is an event where Scale, NUS, in collaboration with the Center on AI Technology for Humankind, organizes an event with an outreach that is global. We're happy to say that. And we based ourselves on the research that we've conducted in our center. So before we move to the panelists, we would like to put a little bit in perspective what the Center on AI Technology for Humankind, which already has an emphasis on inclusiveness, and the research that has been done in this center on the topic of women, leadership, and technology, that forms the basis of this event. We would like to introduce you a little bit more to this. And I would like to start with a timeline. It's a very AiTH, or Center on AI Technology for Humankind, is very recent at NUS. And actually, as you can see on the timeline, I'm not going to go into detail with everything, so don't worry. But some important dates have been the launch of the center, which was on 23rd of April, 2020. And it was a virtual launch because, unfortunately, as we all know, because of the pandemic, our ideas initially were to have a big event face-to-face, but because of the pandemic, we had to move it to virtual. So it is more or less 1 year old. Two of our panelists, Carolyn and Melanie, are also board members at the center. But I would lie that this is the first day of AiTH. Actually, the origins lie a few years earlier already, when I was a professor at the University of Cambridge, where we had an initiative which was called Leading Artificial Intelligence and Digital Management, or called LEAD. Right there in the ecosystem of Cambridge University, which they call CAMFAN, the Silicon Valley of Europe, many of our thoughts were already ripening in terms of how to use technology for good, how to use technology for humanity. But we were lucky to be able to find NUS as a platform, as a fertile ground where we can bring East and West together in all these ideas when we move to NUS. I would like to thank, first of all, as well, the donor, of course. This center was established by means of the personal donation by Rachel Du. So we are very grateful that she gave us a jumping board to bring this together in Singapore, to have a global outreach. We started with this virtual launch, and some other events that we've organized were a book release on leadership by algorithm, because our main aim is really to promote thought leadership, to fuel discussions on AI ethics, on technology and workforce, the future of work, diversity, inclusiveness in this new technology era. So several pieces have been published already in the major outlets, media outlets in Singapore, the Straits Times, the Business Times, also globally Financial Times, The Economist. We've published several pieces on Harvard Business Review. And one recent one, last month on March, 25th of March, we organized our first big event with Grandmaster Chess Garry Kasparov, who published together with us in Harvard Business Review on the future of work is one of triple AI. Artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, authentic intelligence, human intelligence, leading to augmented intelligence. And we found out that in that process, gender definitely plays a role, but it's interesting how technology is going to influence this. So we hope to discuss this a little bit more today as well. Some other noteworthy events that took place, so that you have the whole picture, is that the World Economic Forum in November last year picked up some of our work on ethics and responsible AI, that we can use AI for good if we also know what our purpose is, what kind of human identity and human society we would like to see. And another big event was that the Times Higher Education this month identified the center as one of the examples in Singapore, together with at NUS, and also NTU was referred to it as universities promoting interdisciplinary research and teaching. So our center was referred to as the perfect combination of social sciences, computer science, and psychology. So we're very happy with the progress that we've made, and we're very happy to see that we ended up also collaborating with NUS on this dreaming big idea. So two more things, our vision and mission statement, as we all have. We want to be the premier center in Asia that advances our knowledge in AI technology, promoting humankind. And we hope that this will influence the engineering of AI technology, that we know that we use technology for humans first, and not we use technology to promote technology as an end user in itself. A final look at, sorry, this is not really going well. Our values, I'm not going to go into detail, but just quickly would like to list the values. Tolerance. We believe a humane society is tolerant towards people, respectful towards people. Humanity. Of course, we like to promote the well-being of humans and promote our human values that are unique to us: compassion, forgiveness, empathy. Integrity is important. Machine cannot decide on all of these things for us. Mindful automation. When we start automating, that we're mindful of all our human stakeholders, and broad-minded innovation, reflecting what the president already has referred to and what the highest times education referred to as we have diversity of opinion, diversity of ideas, diversity across every class, and we promote that for innovation. So this is what our center is about. And like I said, we developed a certain research line on gender diversity, leadership, and technology. And to explain this a little bit more, I would like to pass the baton now to Dr. Mahek Nagpal, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the center, and who will explain a little bit more what the basis is of the event today in terms of our research findings. Mahek, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, David. I am going to be talking about some of the research that we've been doing over here at the center as it pertains to today's topic of discussion. In one line of research that we've been working on, we've found that being tech savvy really helps women to be perceived as leaders. And it really should not come as too much of a surprise that the skills that leaders require today have really evolved, more so as we transition into the 21st century. Technological innovations are disrupting how organizations function. Leaders today need to be tech savvy enough to facilitate these digital transformations taking place, ensuring that all have a tight enough grasp of technology to be able to leverage it to develop a competitive advantage, for their companies. Now, given how leadership criteria are evolving in this technological era, it really is worth asking, is who gets considered leader-like changing too? Specifically, will these trends also disrupt long-standing biases, such as the think manager, think male bias that has largely prevented women from reaching companies' top echelons? To examine whether the definitive trait of the current technological era, that is tech savviness, will change the perception and evaluation of female managers, leading to the recognition of their leadership capabilities, we actually ran a series of experiments. And of course, as you can see up on your screen there, several noteworthy results emerged from our study. First of all, and quite unsurprisingly, we found that there's a stark evidence of bias against women as leaders. Before taking into account tech savviness, that is. However, that gap between female and male managers disappeared when the leader was presented as tech savvy. Interestingly, perceptions of being tech savvy did not have an effect on participant evaluations of leadership emergence of male managers, meaning that regardless of being tech savvy or not, participants recognized the leadership capabilities of male managers. In the case of female managers, however, those who were presented as tech savvy were perceived to be at least as leader-like as male managers, irrespective of whether the male manager was tech savvy or not. On the other hand, female managers who were not perceived to be tech savvy were considered less leader-like than male managers. Again, irrespective of whether the male manager was tech savvy or not. And so our results really suggest that when female managers are considered tech savvy, they are perceived as leaders to the same extent that male managers are. For male managers, such an effect does not seem to exist. And so the natural question that results from that is, what are the implications of these findings for organizations and leadership development? And so our findings really underscore the need for women to highlight their tech savviness, whether that's organizational leadership, really encouraging employees, specifically their female employees, to sign up for projects and workshops that focus on technology, or, female employees themselves, actively volunteering to be a part of teams working on tech-related projects and participating in tech-related courses that are being offered by the company. And then our findings also demonstrate the power of impression management, right, when it comes to being perceived as tech savvy. If female managers feel sort of uncomfortable about communicating or self-promoting their technological capabilities, female managers may instead choose to visually but explicitly display their real interest in technologies. One way, as our experiment shows, is to make technology a part of one's office space. Additionally, women may choose to integrate technological solutions into their team projects. This, of course, implies time spent on keeping abreast with the latest technological tools. Finally, women should definitely effectively communicate their interest in tech-related issues, if not conversationally with colleagues, then certainly behaviorally, as described previously. Demonstrating such a mastery over technology will send the message that this individual understands the technological related challenges of the 21st century. And then when the time comes to determine who should be promoted, that increase in social status stemming from women's real as well as perceived tech savviness, may make all the needed difference. And so with that, I'm going to be handing the reins back over to David so that together with our panelists, we can get our discussion started on the really interesting interplay between gender diversity, leadership, and technology.
Thank you, Mehak, for presenting our results and showing the relevance why we're doing today what we're doing. Before we move to the panel, I would like to tell the audience again that if you have any questions, please drop your questions in the chat box and we'll get back to them at the end of this session. So now, without further ado, let's move on to the panelists. So I would like to introduce them all one by one so that we are clear who we're talking to. As the first invitee, which I'm really proud to mention, that we were able to have Miss Andrea Della Matea, who is the president of Microsoft Asia Pacific. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, David, and thank you for inviting me to join today's session. I have the pleasure of leading Microsoft's organization across Asia Pacific. Very pleased to be here with you today.
And we're very happy that you're here. Thank you. Our second invitee, who is a good friend of mine, we met here in Singapore, and like I said, she's also a board member of AiTH, is Miss Carolyn Chin Perry, Digital Innovation Leader at PwC Singapore. And my favorite phrase, she is the IT Woman of the Year in Asia. She is the expert. So I'm really happy that you could join today, Carolyn. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, David.
And then our third invitee from China, so it is truly a global event, is Miss Jane Sun. She's the Chief Executive Officer and member of the Board of Directors of Trip.com Group. I got to know the company many years ago, C-Trip, because James Liang, your founder, is a good friend of mine. But now we're called Trip.com Group. Jane, thank you for joining in and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And last but not least, a very good friend of mine. We know each other for many years already. Melanie Richards. I start with, you're the commander in the British Empire, so that everyone knows you are in the UK at the moment. You were former deputy chair and board member of KPMG, where we met. And what I would like to stress, she's one of the founding members of the 30% Club Steering Committee in the UK, which is an important initiative on promoting gender diversity and leadership. So Melanie, thank you for joining and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
It's my pleasure. So my first step would be to all get to know you a little bit better. So let's do it as for the first question a little bit in a formal way. I would like to ask each of you if you look at your own leadership trajectory, your own career, if I would ask you, can you introduce yourself in 1 or 2 minutes? What is it that you stand for, who you are, and what you see as essential to your leadership in the role that you're taking up to? Andrea, could I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely, David. Look, from our perspective, with the world becoming a computer, and I'm sure you would agree, every aspect of our daily life, work, economy, and society, well, they're all being transformed by tech. And our purpose is to build technology so that others can create technology that transforms societies. And as an organization, we believe that experience, talent, and skills are really the value proposition that we bring to businesses, industries, communities, and countries. And from a personal perspective, when I look at inclusion allyship, covering, and accessibility. Well, these are some of the layers that we really need to increase awareness around. And we can all make that happen by ensuring better access to education, training and technology. And that's something I feel very, very strongly about. As a leader, it's my job to create an environment and to curate a culture where everyone feels they can be successful and where they can be their true, authentic selves.
Okay. Thank you so much. I very much like your reference to culture. Once a great man, who I think you know very well, said the C in CEO stands for culture.
Yes, that's right.
So thank you. Carolyn, can I go to you? So if I would ask you, who are you from your leadership, what your views are in the roles that you take today, what is it that you stand for, what you find important?
I think as a digital person, I am, very passionate about digital inclusion. I think that this growing digital divide is pretty much growing all the time. If we look at the latest digital inclusion index, Singapore came up at the top of over 80 countries in that study. But even through my own experience, I know that while Singapore is doing very well in the digital space, we always still have pockets of communities where people are lagging behind in the digital space. It could be people who have less savviness in the tech space. Sometimes it's due to lack of skill sets. Other times it's due to maybe lack of interest. There are also people who are a little bit older who might be less interested in technology or don't have access to it. And I think what's really interesting is to note that 1/3 of ASEAN, that's 150 million people in this region, do not have access to digital. So that really makes me very passionate about wanting to make sure that I play an active part in terms of digital upskilling. Sometimes it's pro bono to charities and nonprofits. Other times it's about mentoring and coaching other people as well in less fortunate circumstances to ensure that we lift the poverty levels of certain countries, and also to make sure that, in the digital world, that's not going to actually be less diverse and inclusive. We actually want to make sure that we promote diversity and inclusion. And I believe that through the right type of technology, as well as people's willingness to help out, that this can be done. So with PwC, last year I held a APAC role looking after the digital upskilling initiative for our 84,000 employees around APAC. This included making sure that we have, data literacy skills, visualization, analytics, as well as automation skills. It's not just for our client-facing staff. Even my own personal assistant knows how to use all these types of different skill sets and technologies. And it's really making sure that we are ready for the future of work. And I think that many people are very anxious about the future of work. And of course, COVID didn't help that either. So for me as a professional, it's really making sure that this world becomes a little bit more fairer if we can. But it requires a fair bit of action and commitment to make that happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And I can testify, you are a sharing person. So it really, to me, I recognize this in your leadership, that it is about inclusiveness and sharing with the skills that you have. So thank you. Jane, may I ask you the same question? How would you define yourself, who you are, what your kind of leadership is, what you try to achieve in your leadership trajectory?
Sure. Trip.com is the largest travel company in China and largest in Asia. In terms of GMV, it's also the largest in the world. So I took advantage of being the CEO of the most powerful travel company in the world and travel to many countries. And no matter where I am, whether in UK, in the USA, or in the refugee camps in Syria, I feel people from different countries are focusing on the same thing. We want our children to have good education, for our young people to have good career, and for our families to have peaceful and prosperous lives. And with that, technology play a very important role, because in the refugee camp, in a remote area where people do not have access to anything, as long as we give them a cell phone, they're able to post their home hotel online, their handcrafts online, make a living of it. be part of the travel ecosystem. So technology becomes such an empowerment for many females who are left behind in a poor village, in a country which is so devastated. But we give them a tool so that they can present what they have to the tourists and attract the tourists to their area and improve their life. So for me, technology is very critical, not only for the people who are involved in the high-tech industry, but also empower the females in the world which have very little access to economic benefits.
Okay. So I definitely see the use of technology to promote inclusiveness, especially for the female population, of course, to create that value and to connect, because yes, empowerment is important. I recognize that in Citrus, definitely. Melanie, same question for you.
Thanks, David. And look, hugely impressive introductions from Andrea, Carolyn and Jane about both what they're doing and what their organizations are doing. And I thought, given that I've now left KPMG and it's been sort of 6 months since I left, I've had an opportunity to reflect on my career and maybe think quite a lot about where I am now and where I will go and what has sort of distinguished that career. And I say that with kind of great humility, because I think you kept using the word luminaries, and I just consider myself a person who has had incredible opportunity, incredible luck along the way. And I know we're not meant to say that, but I think that I've been working for almost 40 years. And so when I look back, I had a career in banking for half of it and a career in KPMG for half of it. And as you might imagine, I've seen incredible change. And as all the other panelists have talked about, that scale of change is only destined to get quicker, and technology is going to be right at the heart of it. And if I think about the things that I think were parts of my DNA that I think are going to be incredibly important for individuals as they move forward, I would consider agility, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace change as critical features of any individual right now. And when I talked about my luck, part of it was that I was willing to try new things. And I think if you listen to the things that Andrea and Carolyn and Jane have all said, the incredibly important aspect of that is that willingness to embrace change. Now, you kindly referenced the fact that I've been involved in, if you like, female empowerment and progression for very, very many years. But I think just very briefly, what do I stand for? I stand for excellence, because I think there is no avoiding really hard work, and there's no easy and quick routes to creating change, or indeed leading change. The second would be ethics and integrity, and I'm sure we'll unpack that a little bit more. And then the last is empathy and fairness, which some might call inclusion, some might call, but I think you and I have talked a great deal about the fact that as we think about the development of technology and we move forward, if we do that without losing sight of our own humanity, our own humility, I think we will get into big trouble. So from my perspective, much of my focus is not so much on the technology itself, but what's the impact going to be, and how are we going to harness that impact for good?
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I think it's a nice top up on what we've already heard from the 3 other leaders. Your reflective tone shows very nicely that, yes, we all have focus on our inclusiveness, the education, the skills we need, but we need to put it in a bigger picture now. And I would like to do this as the next question. So now I would like to open the floor a little bit, so you can choose who starts first. So I'm not going to point fingers anymore, but all of you basically refer to the importance of skills, education, empowerment of women, giving the opportunities, creating conditions to do this. So knowing what we, for example, found in the center on women, when they're seen as tech savvy, they actually have bigger chances today to be seen as leadership material. Their status goes up. So the big question that I want to ask you now is, If it is it that simple? Is it that women need to find ways to promote their status? Is that by means of education? Is that by means of certain skills? Is that by means of being empowered? And in what way? Who empowers who? Those are important and crucial questions, I think. So what is your opinion about this in terms of what is the first step to make that women basically join everyone in the ladder of being perceived as more tech savvy, having the right education, having the right skills, and the right empowerment? What are your suggestions? What is your view on this? Who wants to start first?
I can take a try on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I always feel very privileged to be first to become the CFO of Trip.com and later on to be promoted to be the COO, the president, and now the CEO of the company. In the high-tech industry, it is very male-dominated. So as a CEO, also as a mother of 2 daughters, I feel tremendous responsibility to set the policy so that we empower the next generation of the female leadership. So in our company, we offer many policies. For example, when a female is pregnant, we offer free taxi to take them home and bring them to work. When the baby is born, we give them 800 as a welcome gift, 3,000 as education fee. When they come back to work, we offer flexible working hours. And nowadays, I also noticed that many female students are taking PhDs, studying overseas. So when they come back, they have a biological clock, which make the birth period a little bit shorter if they get advanced degree. So many of them are struggling whether to have family first or children first or work first. So we come up with a policy that if our female workers decide to have their eggs frozen, Trip.com will pay for it. And we are the first company and only company in China who does that. And I had to take on lots of pressure standing in front of the media to defend our policy because lots of people, particularly male in the workforce who do not have this kind of pressure will question us. Are you encouraging females not to have a family? And I thought through this and I told the media that it is always good to give females more choices, more options. If you like the option, you can take it. If you don't like the option, nobody forces you to take it. That's how I calm down the media question. But as an executive, we really need to step up and make sure our female employees are given a very good opportunity to take away their worries so they can be very successful in a very high male-dominated industry. Thank you.
So I hear you say very much the organization is responsible for providing the right empowerment for female talents to rise their ranks and build their careers as well, especially in technology, because it seems you're saying the technology industry especially requires this. Okay, any comments, any additions?
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. Congratulations, Jane. I think you're leading such an impressively inclusive and supportive environment for women. And of course, I'm sure more than just women as well. Maybe I can take a slightly different stance to this because I think that Jane covered what some of the more inclusive organizations can do for their staff. So maybe I could look at it from an individual perspective. I think as all professionals, we should all really think about how can you add value to an organization? What are you truly passionate about, and where are some of your more natural skills? And I think also really about taking charge of your own career as well as your own learning, and not waiting for anyone to, budge you to move along in that direction. So, if you are someone who is a little bit more tech savvy, fantastic. I think there's enough findings earlier that were shared that would help in your career. But if you are less or a little bit slower in this particular space, to really think about what are you truly genuinely passionate about. I think that once you know what you're passionate about, it's a lot easier to then join the dots as to what the future of work might look like for you. In particular, if you are, say, for example, a very people person and you like helping others, then maybe from a tech viewpoint, is it a case of perhaps being a change management professional? On the other hand, if you're someone who's fantastic with numbers and naturally good with analytical skills, then maybe it's another area where you could look at maybe focusing on data or analytics and being in that space. So I think it's really joining the dots where you try to find what are some of the new trends out there? What are some of the new jobs and skills out there going to look like? But then also then being quite authentic to yourself, where you kind of ask the difficult question of what really makes me very passionate. If I could choose a career where I could marry, my true passion, my natural skill sets, and potentially a career that could, leverage some of these things, but maybe I might need to do a little bit of learning, then I think that will help you to join the dots and then think about what that path could look like. I, just for example, I never started off as a technologist. I did a Bachelor of Commerce, so I didn't have an IT vein in me. And I graduated during the Asian financial crisis, and then decided to do my master's in e-commerce. And even then, I was not as tech savvy as a number of my counterparts. And if you can imagine, when I graduated from my master's, it was the dot-com crash. And guess what? I studied e-commerce. So I think that sometimes we just have to roll the punches. I really resonate with graduates, mid-career as well as late career professionals right now who are finding it really tough because of the COVID situation. But I just like to take a moment to encourage you just to continue with your learning, seeing what you can do to add value to your current career. And even if your current career is on hold due to reasons that might be out of your control, to then line that up for the coming years and so forth. Because I want you to know that employers like ourselves are very understanding of what recession looks like and what difficult times can look like, and we can always oversee those things based on your passion, your drive, as well as your willingness to learn and adapt.
Yeah, okay. So when you said like you're taking a little bit of a different perspective, I felt like you're stressing a lot authenticity. You're basically the driver as well there for your own career, in addition to organizations empowering you as well. So they have to meet each other, if I hear you well. Okay. And Andrea, I see you nodding. So what is your view on the skills, the education, because you mentioned education and skills very clearly in when you introduce yourself as a value that as a leader you see as important.
I think Caroline and Jane have made some really good points, and perhaps to even broaden the perspective a little, depending upon where you are in your education or your career, I think it's fair to say that the pressure to excel, to do more, to be with our families, I have 2 teenage boys myself. For some to climb that proverbial corporate ladder, look, it can be really challenging. And, I get asked a lot about, balance. And, let's face it, the competition today with the world flattening is, can be unrelenting. And I think while it's hard for everyone, I think it actually can be harder for women. And, I love the concept of womenomics. So, the idea that women's economic advancement can really improve an economy as a whole. And that's such a powerful platform to think about the impact that we can have on the world around us. And I think it's fair to say we're starting to see perhaps more governments increasingly recognizing that their economies can only reach full potential with the full participation of both men and women. And, that collectively as leaders, private and public organizations, I think we can make that happen by we all having a responsibility to ensuring access to education, to training and technology, just as you touch on. The more we look to technology to meet the unarticulated or the unmet needs, then the more that can really help become the source of innovation. And it's fair to say, as we've seen over the last year, innovation has really helped businesses to become more resilient and provide jobs. And that's really how we strive to empower people and organizations, to be successful. But technology isn't just about writing code. It's not just learning how to write code. It's more about problem solving through technology, creating something that we can all be excited about, and using that creativity to create something new, perhaps something, unthought of before, and collaborating with others and breaking down, some of these barriers. But unfortunately, the other thing the pandemic has really shown us is just the inequalities that have existed for many years, but the crisis has really brought them into that sharp focus. And Carolyn touched earlier on the digital divide widening. We've certainly seen that. You know, women and young people, minorities and low-skilled workers have been disproportionately affected by job and income loss. And I heard Melanie touch on empathy and fairness. You know, it breaks my heart when you think about there are higher rates for females being laid off during the pandemic, and you have females who some are considering downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce altogether at staggering rates that we haven't seen before in some countries, or stalling in their careers. And Jane, you touched a little earlier on, you know, what we want for our children is really good education. When you think about, again, you know, some of the external research points to the fact that 10 million additional middle income countries will drop out of secondary education based upon the impacts of the pandemic. So that's why I think about the bigger picture. When we think about how economies can respond and recover, it's just so important that women empowerment becomes mainstream. And the role in the economy needs to be just across industry and across organizations. It can't be an afterthought really, you know, or a tick box. And, you know, for me, coming from an engineering background, I've always been passionate about encouraging young females into STEM and ultimately into STEM education and STEM careers. I just think now than ever, it's more important because we're all in this together and helping, you know, contribute to a more inclusive and accessible environment.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. I very much like your concept of economy as a whole. In itself, that's already the inclusiveness that we're trying to strive for. Because I think we all agree very much on, look, if we want to make this work, both men and women, they need to be there. Because that provides a legitimacy to keep pushing the transformations, the changes that we need. And I think very much like, especially COVID-19 shows, yes, things may have improved, but actually, yeah, we still have a lot of work to do. I think that's definitely out there. Melanie, you're nodding. So what are your views?
I was very taken with everything that's already been said, and maybe just a couple of sort of reflections. I think this is about mindful intervention, both at an organizational and a personal level. So when I heard Andrea speak so eloquently and passionately, the reality is that unless organizations are actually thinking at every step of the way, whether it's when they're making layoffs, when they're making hiring decisions, when they're making decisions about job descriptions, et cetera, all of the things we've just described are mindful intervention, that people are thinking in terms of what's the impact at an individual level. And then if I think about it at a personal level, and I couldn't agree more with many of the things, in fact, everything that Carolyn said about people needing to find who they are at their core, what excites them. And I think you used the word, their sort of authentic place. But I think the truth behind Mahak's research is that for many, many years, women are more likely to need to evidence their skills to hiring for talent, et cetera. And what the research is showing is how that has become ever more important. And then on the other hand, we also have a perception and probably a reality that there is a shortage of technology savvy related talent. And so I would say to all individuals out there, but most specifically the women, you know, you need to be smart. Yes, you need to be authentic. Is it something that interests you? But technology is going to be red-threaded through everything that we do as we move forward. I can't remember whether, Andrea, you used the words that, you know, we were going to become computers, or not become computers, but the world was going to be just one big computer. And if that is the world in which you and we are as individuals are operating, we kind of have a responsibility to be sufficiently curious about technology that we can be articulate about what our role alongside technology looks like. And so I agree with everything that's been said, but I would say to people, yes, go find your place, but also be a bit savvy about what that place is when you look at the landscape you're operating in.
Thank you. I really like that. I see everyone nodding. So, okay, we're converging. So I'm going to I'm going to elaborate on 2 points that you said, and I think you'll all find very interesting. So first of all, what I hear you say is that, yes, you need to pay attention to technology. Technology is here. Technology is changing our world. You work in an industry where technology is dominant and is being employed. But at the same time, Melanie, you said the world is not a machine only. This is something that we look at AiTH as well. We need values that, so until now, most have described as more female, more communal. The empathy, taking a perspective, collaboration, community sense. We cannot lose those values. So in a sense, I see there's an important role actually. We say from an interdisciplinary research, oh, more social sciences into engineering. What I hear you say is, well, we need a female touch in the technology. So I have 2 questions. How can universities, because of course we're here at NUS, how can education play a role in this? We want more STEM graduates, but that's not the whole story when I'm listening to you. Being a STEM graduate is not the only thing. Probably we need more. And second of all, does it start at the university? Is it education only, or is it also something in society that we need to change? So what's your view on this? If we want to push this agenda further, we need this female touch into technology.
I can also take a try. I recently attended an HR meeting hosted by many headhunting firms. Their feedback is that if your specialty in the university is tech-driven, the opportunity for you is tremendous. However, they noticed that a lot of students, female students, are now studying finance, accounting, etc., which is also great. But the competition and the available jobs is much less. So from their perspective, the moment you put yourself away or not brave enough to tap into the tech field, when you graduate, your job opportunity is more limited than in school. You brave yourself and take some classes in the technology. So what I was trying to do is in a university where I graduate, my husband graduate, even in high school, I go to talk to the principal, really make sure we put extra efforts to encourage the female students to take the courage to learn as much STEM classes as possible, because you don't have to be a coding engineer, but knowing some technology will be really widening the career fields for them. So I think we really need to start from the very beginning to give more encouragement for the female students. So they're more brave, taking on the classes and open up the door for them in the future.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's probably what you were referring to as well, Andrea, and I think Melanie, what you're saying, like, yeah, it's not only a technology touch that we need. People, first of all, and women especially, need to be encouraged in finding their place and their identity first. Because may I say that technology today is too masculine?
Yeah, can I make an observation, David, that I think sometimes if we get to sort of the gender stereotypes of all women are empathetic and all men aren't, we run some really big risks there. Yeah. And I tend to try and steer away from that kind of categorization, even if there is that sort of notion, and there is some truth to some of it. And actually, I think what we really are saying is that we need more inclusive and collaborative leaders. And how do we create an education system? How do we create a work environment that values and rewards inclusive and collaborative leaders? And I think, you know, I look around and I see all of the great organizations on this call, and I know that they will all be aspiring to that. And I know, you know, that's what we individually aspire to. But the real question for me is, aside from the skills, the technology skills, and whether you did this degree or that degree, what are we doing to reward at an organizational level that sort of behavior? Because if that is threaded through organizations And let's be very clear, it is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. And if it were that easy to achieve, we wouldn't be having this conversation about women versus men or the unfairness of society or whatever else. I do think that that's where education can help, because I think the people that we are putting into organizations have the opportunity to start to influence that culture in a way. But you know, we need to make sure that we aren't just focused on skills, we're focused on leadership qualities, would be my observation. And leadership starts not at the top of an organization when you reach it, it starts from your mindset when you join it.
Yeah. I actually like something that you're saying a lot. I mean, I like everything you're saying, but there's a point that really you touched here that I like in the education sector. We seem to think, you know what, we just need more female students in STEM graduates and everything will be fine. But that's not what you're saying. It's more like, no, if men and women, they get these skills, but it's about collaboration. It's about building a legitimate world where basically we collaborate, having these skills, but it's not about STEM itself. Because I feel sometimes that universities are pushing that agenda still too much. It seems like it's about STEM itself, and let's just make sure we also have enough female graduates. But that's not the point. I don't know. How do you think about that?
So,
Andrea?
So look, I think on one hand, if we don't have enough women visible regularly in every industry, whether it's sports or business, you know, science, tech, engineering, or leadership for that matter, then I think girls don't feel they have someone like themselves to role model.
The empowerment.
Yeah, and I think there's enough research around the power of role models, mentors, and coaches, particularly for youth. And look, as leaders in organizations, you know, we have the opportunity and frankly the responsibility to really make that happen across every industry and every market, you know, every country. But more than ever, technology has actually become a multidisciplinary sport. And if you look at where tech is going, anyone who majors in computer science or data science, for example, you know, also needs to have a grounding in other disciplines, like liberal arts, for example. And similarly, students studying non-tech courses, like liberal arts or commerce, need to have some exposure to computer science, data science, because we are seeing tech, you know, infused into our daily lives and into careers and corporate roles like never before. But we need to step back and recognize that these who are going to solve the world's greatest problems using technology will most likely be multidisciplinary teams, very diverse teams with people who have different expertise and who come from different backgrounds and different experiences. Because ultimately that richness of diversity means then you have people from all cultures, walks of life and various backgrounds represented.
Yeah, I very much agree with Andrea on this point, because I think that when we look at, say, you know, history, and not that long ago we had the, you know, global financial crisis, or some people call it, you know, the credit crunch. And the organizations that recovered the fastest from it were the ones that had the most diverse boards. And this was something that was raised by Richard Branson. So clearly having diverse teams to help troubleshoot and get you out of a difficult situation clearly shows a lot of strengths. And I think that there's been, you know, quite a lot of studies, especially in the last couple of years, to show how diversity actually makes a organization a lot stronger. So definitely agree on Andrea's points in that particular area. I would say that, you know, I also agree that sometimes we really do need a lot more role models. I do believe that, you know, females in particular don't always have great role models sometimes, especially in the STEM areas. They don't necessarily see and touch and can aspire or identify top people, females in those areas easily. So one of the commitments that we have actually done as a firm is actually to make sure that we pledge towards running some road shows and targeting some ghost schools, whereby we try to catch students between the ages of 14 to 16, which is actually the most impactful time where students start to think through about what they want to specialize in, the subjects they like to do. And, you know, for us, it's really making sure that we run some roadshows so that, you know, girls can actually see that there are women who are doing well in the STEM sector. It's great for them to hear different stories and perspectives of how other women have thrived in what appears to be a very male-dominated industries. And I think it's also very great to include parents in that discussion. So one of the good things is that while we can't do roadshows physically in the schools at the moment due to COVID, we are planning to run a number of webinars to include both parents as well as schoolgirls to attend these kind of sessions to draw inspiration from great women doing awesome work in these kind of male-dominated sectors, and to allow the parents to ask questions, because the last thing you want to do is also run the roadshows where girls become very inspired, but then when they go home, maybe, you know, the parents may not be so supportive, right? So being able to include that in that discussion is fantastic. But I think also outside of talking about women, outside of STEM, there are also certain, I wouldn't identify, but I think we might know, there's certain races and religions where it's also less, I guess, observed, I guess, especially in STEM, especially in IT. So we're actually also purposely targeting certain schools, such as certain religious groups, to actually really convince them. And we're bringing people who come from those kind of backgrounds to then also help us in those roadshows to inspire other people as well. Because sometimes when you can't see, you can't visualize what it looks like, you know, it's hard to then decide that, oh, that's the area that I want to specialize in. And the other thing I wanted to raise quite briefly is actually there's a lot of leakage. So I think about a month or so ago, the main newspapers in Singapore, which is the Straits Times, had actually demonstrated there's a fair bit of leakage in the actual talent pipeline. So while a lot of girls are more, I guess more girls are going into STEM, however, there is a little bit of a leakage. When the time that they graduate, they don't necessarily go then into the STEM profession. So there's also a number of reasons for that. So hence, we're also committing to making sure we do a lot of executive coaching, and, you know, for women who do try to go into these fields, to make sure that they feel very supported, because some might decide in their 20s that I'm going to drop out because I'm going to start a family. I can't see myself being in this environment and so forth. So I think it's making sure that we are inclusive where we can be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that last point. I very much like that, because this is definitely a reality that we see. Getting the right degree, that's a step, but it's what happens afterwards. And I think that's what Melanie also mentioned, is you need a collaborative environment, which mentoring, coaching. So may I ask a question to all four of you, whether, because you referred to role modeling. So I suppose, and for many of us, you are a role model yourself. So how do you see yourself? What are your responsibilities as a role model yourself? And what have been the challenges in your own career in trying to find such a role model? Or maybe you didn't have challenges, but I'm sure there were many challenges. How did you deal with that in order to become the role model you are today?
I can give a try. A lot of issues female are facing is how society evaluate our success. So if a career woman is very successful, we also need to evaluate how well not only we're taking care of our careers, but also our families. So in a way, we very much love to have males also to take care of the family as much as possible. We need to lean in, they need to lean out a little bit. But at the current status is that as an executive, I feel being a role model is to be very thoughtful for our female leadership team. For example, when one time I remember we had an offsite leadership team, and one of my director reports just had a baby and she was breastfeeding her baby. So naturally, I understand if she stopped feeding her baby for 1 day or two, her milk will disappear. So I offered to her that she can take her baby with her for our meeting, and during the meeting break, she can breastfeed her baby. And she was very grateful for our offer, and her family are very grateful. So we probably get the eternal loyalty from this employee. And it's very easy to do. Our company didn't have to do any sacrifice just to be thoughtful. And I'm very glad I'm in the CEO position, because if I did not make the offer, very few employees will have the courage to come and talk to the CEO and ask if she can bring the baby with her for the offsite meeting. So I feel it's very important for us as a leader in that position to give the females more room and be more thoughtful and establish the infrastructure so that to eliminate a lot of unnecessary burdens or barriers so that they can take care of both their work as well as their family.
Thank you, Jane. And it seems like this is something that defines your leadership. Really, you take an active approach in this yourself, very much so. Andrea, so how do you see your role as, I mean, I know you're out there as well promoting your ideas. So how do you see your role modeling, and how's your trajectory there? Was it easy for you to get there, to be that role model you wanted to be?
You know, David, when I think back to university, and you know, I was in my late teens when I started, and then early 20s when I graduated, long time ago. But I still vividly remember that first day walking into the lecture hall and seeing this sea of young, hopeful students. It was a sea of young, hopeful male students because I'd chosen to study engineering. And I think in hindsight, that was really quite indicative of the road ahead for me, where ultimately I'd chosen a career in technology. You know, my first couple of jobs, I was, you know, the only female engineer. It was very common to be the only female in the room. And particularly with, you know, others around me, whilst there are a lot of role models, there were very few female role models, both at university and ultimately in my career. And as a result, I very much feel I have that, you know, that personal responsibility to do everything I can to be able to be there to connect with young female students. I remember spending International Women's Day before the pandemic, previously one year, with 500 young female students in Sri Lanka, high school students, just listening to their dreams and ambitions, but finding and creating opportunities to connect with students at high school, upper education, you know, university, you know, early in career, I think is just so crucially important. And I was very fortunate, though, early on in my career to work for people and to work with organizations who did not see gender and who gave me, you know, an equal opportunity to be able to progress in my career. I think it was Melanie who said that there was a little bit of luck and, you know, a lot of hard work. And look, Melanie, I couldn't agree more with your comments. I do think you have to put yourself out there. I do think you have to take a risk. I do think you have to be comfortable being in an uncomfortable situation, to be able to learn and grow and to have the opportunity to take a risk and to fail and to continue, you know, to learn and grow. But to do that, you do need to be in an environment where you're encouraged, you know, to be able to do that. And I think role models and coaches really play a very important part. So look, my advice to some of the attendees we have today, you know, when you start to think about, you know, your career, find people you love working with, people you love working for, you know, organizations who will champion diversity and inclusion. There are so many companies out there today that I think really understand the importance of people and the power of people within a company. It's that external brand and your reputation of a company. But think about how you want to leave your mark and make an impact and to contribute not only to the culture within, you know, a company that you ultimately may work for or decide to start up yourself, but the community around. You know, we all have the opportunity to give back and to give that helping hand to others.
Thank you. Like I said, you've been helped. You helped back, but you, yeah. I think Carolyn, you referred to passion and authenticity, and I think Andrea, this is also what you're actually advocating, and Melanie, you refer to agility, curiosity, as an environment. And what I hear you say, Andrea, and I think this is also what Microsoft, this was a big change at Microsoft, to create that kind of culture. Because it's that kind of culture that probably will drive when I got to know Melanie, when she in KPMG, she was inclusiveness and collaboration. That was the culture, the big C that you put out there. Melanie.
There were so many things that resonated with what Andrea said. And one of the things I'd say is that I was a sort of slightly unwilling role model because, you know, not because I didn't see myself as in being important to bring people through, but it's it can sort of feel quite a label and a burden in a way. And I don't mean burden as in not wanting to do it, but burden as in sort of being held up in that way. And I think what's really, really important is that we focus on doing some big things, which as leaders in organizations, we have the power to do, to go and talk to 500 students, to go and to talk to larger groups of people and make some real impact. And having opportunities like this, you know, I feel very blessed that I get opportunities to talk to people in this way. But I also think that as role models, we can't forget the small things. And so, you know, it's the day-to-day things inside an organization, people seeing how you behave, checking yourself, learning, making sure that you continue to learn as a role model. And I also think for the people on this call, all the people on this call have talked variously about their individual, you know, some have touched on that they have family. I happen to have 2 boys who are a lot older because I'm a lot older. And, you know, those are all parts of who we are and our DNA. But you will come across different people who will provide different things to you as role models. And so there isn't this stereotype of the perfect female leader or the stereotype of the perfect leader. And leaders come with flaws as well, and they come with having lived challenges. And I think the more honest, and Andrea did a really good job of being honest, and so much resonated about being the only woman in the room, all of those things, you know, hopefully that are things that the future leaders that are coming through won't necessarily have to experience. But I think that all I would say is that we have to put ourselves out there so people can almost like licorice all sorts, which, you know, sweets that have a variety of flavors. There are women out there that are a variety of flavors. And what I would impress upon the women who are listening to this is there is no one route. There is no one path, and that you need to find your own path. But if women like us can give you an opportunity to hear that it's possible to do in a variety of different ways, that would be my message to you right now. And I think an important element. And then the last thing I'd say is that men can be role models to women. And I'm not saying that lightly. And it's probably, Andrea, I think you said, you know, you had to have male role models, probably because there weren't huge numbers of women around you. And I'm not here to give a shout out for the men, but there are some great inclusive leaders that I've worked with that I've learned from. And there are great men who gave me opportunity. And so don't think of the world as split into the only role models you can follow are women, because, you know, there may be men that you find equally, have equally attractive skills that you want to mimic. That's all I'll say.
Oh, that resonates with me a lot. I think with everyone, that's very powerful argument. I agree with that. Jane, may I come back to you quickly?
Sure.
Earlier today, you mentioned about the role transition that you had in what I still call C Troop. I apologize, the old.
No worry.
So can you explain a little bit more about what your experience was? Because like you said, you went through the ranks in
Sure.
the company, and we both know James. I mean, you know James much better than I do, but we both know James as a strong founder. So can you, building up on what just Melanie said,
Sure.
men also have an important role to play, be a role model. Can you say a little bit more about your experience there? Because I know it's a very interesting story. So yeah. Are you willing to share this a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would like to share very briefly about my experience. 2 things really are very important in my development. First of all, I was born in Shanghai and I went to Peking University Law School. At the second year, one of the professors from Peking University wanted to select one student to go to study in the USA. And I was very blessed for the opportunity to be selected to go to the USA to study. But at that time, which is 1989, China was very poor. Both of my parents were chemistry engineers, but they only make 100 RMB, which is equivalent to 15 USD per person. So I had to work in a restaurant as a busgirl, in a law school library, 2 jobs, making $3 per hour to support myself. But my professor's family were very kind to me. They took me in and treated me as their own child. So as a good girl, taught by the Confucius, I told them that in China, when a kid is young, parents take care of their children, but when their parents get older, we're supposed to take care of our parents. So when I'm older and when I'm able to, I want to take good care of you. But they told me that, oh, honey, you don't need to take care of me, take care of us. If you can take care and support the international students in the same way we support you, we'll be very happy. So that totally changed my life because I had no blood relationship, didn't know them in the previous life at all, but they were so unselfish, so loving to me. So I always had a dream that someday, if I'm able to, I want to establish a scholarship to help students, name after my professor, and help the international students in the same way they helped me. So that event changed me. And then when I joined the C-TRIP, I had a law degree, had a finance, a business degree. So I joined as the CFO of the company. But then Trip.com was growing so fast. So there are lots of things nobody was taking care of. So I just jumped in to take care of the collecting team, operation team, call center, etc. So gradually our board asked me to take on the COO position as a promotion. And later on, I became the president and then CEO of the company. So I realized that I do not have an engineering background. So for each business line that reports to me, I try very hard to grow the CTO into a CEO. So our technology team is very strong. The CTOs have learned to be a very strong engineer, not only an engineer, but also a CEO in each business unit. And I work very well with all the business leaders reporting to me. So understand my strengths and also grow the team to be complementary to my skills, to me is very important. And plus, my boss, my chairman, James, has a very strong technology background. So 2 of us work very closely back to back with each other to support each other. And one of the reasons why we have such a progressive female leadership policy is that James himself is a leading economist for the demographic economy for innovation. And his belief is that in order to have sustainable growth in technology, we need to have a very healthy population. And because of the one-child policy in China before, China needs to have very progressive policy to reverse the trend. That's why 2 of us use our company as the pioneer for lots of progressive policy. So I feel very blessed for that.
Okay. Well, thank you for your willingness to share that. I knew the story, but it stresses again what we've been hearing so many times now, the collaborative effort here that we see happening. So Carolyn, just to give you the last word for this question, I know you're also someone, especially in your innovation project, collaboration is everything. So what are your ideas about the role modeling that you take and that you stress what is most important and what were your challenges?
I think to begin with, I don't wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and, necessarily identify as a role model. I think, very much we all have inspirations that we draw upon in multiple different ways. And I would say that, you know, with collaboration, it's something which is extremely critical in any team environment. It doesn't even have to be in an innovation space. I think all of us work in a team environment, whether you're in a transport industry, whether you're in a mining industry, or any other industry for that matter. I would say that the collaboration between a diverse team is something which is very, very special. And sometimes it really creates magic. I say that because when you have people of different backgrounds, different perspectives, different skill sets, when you come together to innovate, to ideate, to even solve problems, for example, you all look at it from very different angles because your life experiences are so different. So I would say that we really need to not just have a D&I agenda for the sake of diversity and inclusion, but there actually is true business sense and also financial sense to have such diverse teams, and also to look at what collaboration looks like. I think that, you know, one of the earlier points that Melanie raised, which really resonates with me, was she's saying that, you know, if we really want to have an inclusive and collaborative team members, then what can we do to make sure that we recognize this? And I don't think that this is something that's done well enough by a lot of organizations. My husband and I have a running joke, and our running joke is, show me the KPIs and I'll show you the culture. Because quite often in an organization, the culture is usually, whether we like it or not, very much linked to what the KPIs look like. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity these days to actually promote people to make sure that they're collaborative, that they work well together, that there is good behavior, and people are inclusive in the workplace. I think a lot of this also stands with an organization being able to make sure that they run you know, courses around what biasness might look like, because I think quite often it's about unconscious bias that we all have without even realizing that that even happens. So being able to help educate people in that, and I think that it's something which should be done, you know, within the first month of someone entering any organization. Quite often also say that people who have good behavior sometimes don't get the right recognition as well. And sometimes you then start seeing quite toxic behaviors happening because people start being very selfish, because the KPIs are, you know, don't have anything to do with behaviors, don't have anything to do with the culture or being able to add value to others in the firm. I think that we all owe it to ourselves, regardless of what organization you belong to and what industry it is, to be that person to energize the room, to be that person to support others, to be that selfless person to add value in the organization, to your team and so forth, because, you know, why not? I think that there's a lot of happiness that occurs on the inside when you serve others. So I think that when we start thinking about new leadership styles such as servant leadership or transformational leadership, there are some, I guess, similar types of attributes behind it, such as, you know, being able to be compassionate, show empathy, being a good communicator and so forth, and also adaptability. So some people might say that, oh, those are qualities that perhaps is a little bit more feminine. But, you know, to Melanie's point, it's not about whether it's masculine or feminine. I think they're just qualities that all of us have it. And I think that sometimes it's society that shapes what males should be and what females should be. But in reality, to also Melanie's point, I've also had the pleasure of working with, you know, equally as many nurturing female leaders as I have male leaders. And I think to me, it's really about thinking about what sort of legacy do we want to leave behind as people. It does not matter to me whether a person is in the top part of a hierarchy or not. I believe that everyone can be a leader, and we have seen young women shown to be great leaders regardless of being part of an organization. So when I think about people like Malala Yousafzai, when I think about Greta Thunberg, you know, they are outright leaders in their own way. They didn't necessarily have to come from backgrounds where there's wealth. They didn't necessarily have to come from backgrounds where it's a big name organization, for example, but yet they stood for something that they believe in. They have created a legacy that many can aspire to and made very positive impacts to the world as well as the people behind them. And I'd like to, I guess, ask for people to think about what sort of legacy you'd like to leave behind in this world, beyond just your career or personal life. I think I see it as whole, you know, because I believe that we all can make a difference in this world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. That's also a powerful statement. And you may have seen, okay, we're already running out of time. The good thing is, because I've been scanning all the questions that the audience has as well, one way or another, we managed to address most of these questions by means of our discussion, which means I love the discussion. I think people did as well. There's one final question that I see popping up, and which touches about, Carolyn, what you're saying, and I would like to conclude with that and asking each of you. So what I hear here, I actually hear a lot of hope, and I see a value that our center that I just explained also endorses very much, is tolerance, forgiveness. I feel that we've moved beyond only looking at quota because we have to. It's not something that we have to make into an obligation. I think we all realize, like you said, inclusiveness, collaboration. Both men and women need to find their passion and do, and best that we build a culture, we do this together. But we will fail sometimes. We will have to, we have biases, like you said. So I think, would you agree with this? What is your responsibility? In all of this, the biggest value we may need is tolerance and forgiveness, but combined with the willingness to learn and move on. That's something that I feel that is an underlying tone. May I ask, Andrea, do you feel that that's the kind of culture as well that we need?
Look, I couldn't agree more. I think you can pick a number of different words to depict what we're saying here. It's about diversity, it's about inclusion, it's about allyship, it's about recognizing accessibility, it's about thoughtfulness, it's about empathy. Without a doubt, I think the corporate workplaces of the past, be it public or private sectors, versus where we see society and communities going moving forward, are evolving, you know, for all the right reasons. I think today we're having some tough conversations that we probably should have been having many years ago, and in different countries maybe the conversation comes to life in a bit of a different way, but ultimately we each have the responsibility and the accountability to do our part, either as leaders or as parents, you know, or as citizens. So it's our responsibility and our accountability to contribute to a positive society around us.
Okay, thank you. Melanie, same question for you. Concluding thoughts.
Somebody had to do it. I've done so well. I wasn't on mute before. So I come away from conversations like this feeling incredibly optimistic. The quality of the conversation, the humility of the leaders on the call, and the willingness to embrace change is profound. And the ambition of organizations that Andrea referred to is all there, and it's all there for the making. I think, you know, for all of the awful things that the pandemic has wrought on the world, and all of us will feel it in very different ways wherever we're living, it's also made us much more mindful, much more tolerant. And I think as a human race, I'd like to think, not universally, but I'd like to think it's created more empathy in the world. And I think that has to be a good thing. But for all my optimism, I think this is no time for complacency. So I'm going to use a gardening analogy, which will make my husband laugh because I kill plants for fun. So don't ever buy me a plant. But I'm going to use the garden analogy because what we know is a garden needs to be tended constantly. And I think our organizations, I think where we are today, we need to see this as just the beginning of the next stage of what is an important journey for us all. And I think you talked about the tolerance and forgiveness. I think that is coming through, but I think we need to make sure we hold on to this very, very precious moment in time and continue to make the sort of mindful intervention that we've talked about to make our organizations stronger, to make them more creative, to make them more collaborative, and most importantly, more inclusive.
Thank you so much for your concluding thought there. Jane? Final thought? You're also muted. So Melanie, you're not
sorry. Yeah, so I talked about as an executive what I should do to empower females. As an individual, I really would love to encourage our female students, our female workers, anybody that work in the high-tech industry to really push yourself out of your comfort zone. Many females are very capable, very hardworking. I'm sure you will do a wonderful job. So dare to challenge yourself and step out your comfort zone to always take on more challenge and more responsibility.
Thank you so much for that advice. Carolyn, you're the final one.
Find your passion, find your purpose, and create the legacy that you can be very proud of.
Thank you. Short but powerful. Okay, so this makes that we are at the end of our event. I want to thank all of you, Andrea, Carolyn, Jane, and Melanie, so much for being very open and honest about your own feelings, your passions, your willingness to share also your own leadership ambitions, journey, challenges. I think for the people out there, we have a lot of students who wanted to attend this. You've been role models. Like Melanie said, we've given optimism, but we always know we can always do better and we should do better. That is the main message. So I want to thank all of you again for being part of this panel. I want to thank our audience for the questions you've sent. I hope we've provided some of the answers already, but it's up to you. I think it's up to all of us to take action. Thank you again.
And thank you for hosting us, David.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you all.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.